My name is Edi. I'm coming from Netgen, and I will be presenting something called Netgen Layouts, the thing I've been working on for the past 3 years, together with my colleagues. And so, what is Netgen Layouts? You could say that Netgen Layouts is an application to manage your layouts, your complete layouts on your site, not just a single landing page, but a set of pages, for example, the full categories together with their articles, content search pages, error pages, whatever you wish, you can do it with Netgen Layouts. So we describe it as a layout management and editing app. So up here on the screen, you can see what to do in your VirtualBox virtual machine for the Web Summer Camp to start up the application which we'll be using. In the meantime, while you're doing that, I'm going to go through a bit of concepts about Netgen Layouts, just introduce layouts to those who haven't been on my colleague's presentation on Monday. Do you still need this? Okay. When you start up that application, you get this. This is we call it a demo site or media site. It's a blueprint installation which we use to start up our own projects for our clients. This is open source, so you can install it from our GitHub account with Composer, together with Netgen Layouts, of course. So when you boot up Netgen Layouts, when you think about the concepts, there are two main concepts for understanding. So the first one is layout management and editing. So copying layouts, deleting layouts, duplicating layouts, editing, adding blocks, removing blocks, and so on. So that is one part of the application. And the other, more important part is once you have your layout, what to do with it. So you need to apply it to a set of pages for it to be shown in the front end. So that's a component we call Layout Resolver or Layout Mappings. Depends on how you look at it. It's in front end. It's in that admin interface. It's called Layout Mappings. In the code, it's called Layout Resolver. So this is a default administration interface of Netgen Layouts. It lists all the layouts available on your site. And with this administration interface, you can duplicate the layout, get a copy. You can clear the caches for pages where this layout is applied. This is done through Varnish with the ban. So this is something similar to what Easy already does with their pages. You can delete the layout, of course. You can sort them by some columns to make it easier to manage them. And, of course, the most important thing, you can edit a layout. So let's find the layout for the front page. Let's see which layout that is. So that's a layout called landing page and home. So once we open it, we get a nice application which allows you to edit the layout. So I told you what Netgen Layouts is, but what Netgen Layouts is not a WYSIWYG editor. So you will not get the look and feel of the front page in this editing application. The plan is, however, to add a preview functionality, so you can actually preview a layout while editing it on the front page, but we're not there yet. Hopefully, we will finalize it by the final release, but not making any promises. So this is the important thing to remember. Netgen Layouts is not a WYSIWYG editor. So if you look at the front page, at the top you can see the top menu. You can see the 3 items, and then you can see a block called most popular, or most popular. The T is missing. So in Netgen Layouts, this looks like this. So this is a block coming from a shared layout. I will explain that later. That's why it's striped, so you can't edit it. You get a 3-item block, so do maximalist running, shoes, reduce impact forces, we neglect, and how to follow. So those are these 3 items. And then you get a block, or a set of blocks, which describe this. So you get a title, you have a container block, which allows you to have blocks inside of blocks, and then you have a left and the right column, so left and the right column. So this is basically it when it comes to previewing the layout, the backend version of the layout. On the left-hand side over here, you have a certain set of blocks which come pre-installed with Netgen Layouts. You can, of course, use Netgen Layouts without these pre-installed blocks. You will get no layouts and no blocks, so you need to create all of your own. But we do provide a set of standard blocks and layouts which we use in our development. They are free, they are open source, so you can use them. They range from simple blocks like a title and a text, a button, a map, markdown block, or something like that. Then we have a listing blocks, which are used to list content from the CMS. And to do that, we have a component called a Netgen Content Browser, which can be used standalone outside of Netgen Layouts, but is an integral part of Netgen Layouts. So what it does do is hooks into the backend and allows you to select content from the backend to be added to the block. So once you click Add Items, okay, so this is a visual bug in open source release, you get a representation of your backend in a tree. So this is a representation of easy content of this site. So if you open it in the administration interface, you basically get this tree over here. So now, once I select some items, it takes a while to generate image aliases. Image aliases are shown hidden by default, but they are available here. So once I select the item, it is added into the block. So listing blocks support 2 modes of operation. One is completely manual list of items, so you can add and remove items at will. So for example, you can move them up and down. You can remove certain items, or you can set the position manually, for example, like this. So that's the manual mode of operation. And the second mode of operation is a dynamic query. So a dynamic query is something that fetches data from your CMS automatically by some predefined parameters. So when you switch to a dynamic collection, you get a choice of what query you will use. So this demo site has 2 queries. One comes from Netgen Layouts itself. So this one is called Easy Platform. This is a generic Easy Platform query. And this is content by topic. This is specific to Netgen Media site. But we will use the generic Easy Platform query. And once you select it, you have most of the data, most of the parameters that you already know from legacy Easy Fetches and from the new Easy Stack Search. So you select a parent location, for example, running, You select the sort type, sort direction. We have some advanced options. Is it a list fetch or a tree fetch? You will know this if you worked with Easy Legacy. So you can fetch only main locations. You can filter by content type. You can filter by section and by object state. And then, of course, you can limit and use limit and offset to fetch some items. So let's see. Okay, so running maybe doesn't have anything below it. Oh, okay. So here are some items which are fetched with the query. And now, as you can see, these manual items which we were in the block before were not removed. So the query just kind of wraps around the manual items which are present in the block. So if you move a manual item somewhere below, you will get a free slot which will be populated by the query. And then you get another manual item, and then another item from the query, and so on, until you deplete the items from the query. And that's it. So these are the listing blocks. The next list of blocks is a gallery block, which is similar to listing blocks. The main difference is that they are specific. They are tailored to displaying various galleries on the front end, so the sushi bars, grid galleries, and so on. But the main conceptual way of working is the same as the listing blocks. So next you have the container blocks, which can be used to place blocks inside of blocks. So once I do this, I will get a nice 6 and 6 2-column bootstrap on the front page. Then I can, of course, duplicate the entire container. I get a duplicate. I can delete the entire container, just as I can do with regular blocks. For all blocks, I have also a revert option, which reverts it to the state the block was in a published version of a layout. This? Yeah. So I can also revert block to its published version. And that's it. And finally, you have something we called a placeholder blocks. These are most of the time developer-oriented blocks. What they can do is they show the content of a full view that you render in your Easy platform. Or if you render a Twig template from a controller, we also consider that a full view. So if you show a layout on a route, which is a classic Symfony controller with a rendered HTML.twig file, this is also called a full view. So you can have a Twig block that says, okay, whenever I have a Twig block called body in my full view, I want to render it here. Of course, I cannot show it here because I have no idea what, at the time, I have no idea what the rendering will be, but this is a placeholder. A special variant of that block is a full view block, which takes whatever the controller renders and just outputs it on the page. And that's it. And finally, we have a special block which is only available in Easy. You can use it to render a field of a currently displayed content in the front end. So you can say, whenever my content which is currently displayed has a title field, I want to display it here. If the field does not exist, nothing will happen. So that's it. So this is the layout management app. one final thing to notice is that every block has its own configuration to the right. We will be showing how to create a new block which has these configuration options, and how to extend existing blocks to add new configuration options. So let's discard this. So we showed what a layout is. A shared layout is exactly the same with one minor difference. A shared layout is used to construct other layouts. So if I open again the landing page home layout, you can see that header and footer are disabled, some kind of disabled. You can't edit them here. That's because they come from a shared layout. So the shared layout they're coming from is this one, header and footer. And when you open it, then you get an editing interface for that layout. You can add blocks now to that shared layout. But the point is that you can take a zone in an original layout and replace it with a zone in a shared layout. So that's kind of a way to have reusable blocks which span across multiple layouts. So once I edit a shared layout and add another block below this header block, it will show up in all other layouts, of course. And then, of course, I can have a management interface which unlinks the zone from the shared layout, or I can link a zone with another shared layout. For example, right column article, doesn't really matter. And now when I display this layout, I get a disabled zone which displays the original content from the shared layout. And then, of course, when I unlink it again, I get the original content because the original content is not lost. It's just replaced at the time of rendering. So that's a shared layout. No, so the unlinking is in the original layout, for example. So, sorry. So yeah, so it's down there. It's hidden by the debug toolbar. That's why I hid it. Yeah. So you have an option to unlink from the zone in the shared layout, and then you get the original content of your zone. So the content is never lost. It's just replaced at the time of rendering, and that's it. So finally, the second big component is something we call layout mappings, or layout resolver. We haven't really decided on the name yet. Okay, but the point is that now once you have a set of layouts, so we have here 10 or 15 layouts, you need to have a way to actually apply them on your site. So what this does is has a set of predefined rules which are ordered by priority, and each rule says, okay, take a set of URLs, and if certain conditions are met, use a certain layout to show it on the page. So for example, for landing page home layout, we have a rule that says, okay, when you have a target which is an easy location, so target is nothing more than a set of URLs. It can be a Symfony route, or it can be a path prefix. So you can, for example, apply layout on /user, for example. When you have a target which is an easy location, so in this case, when you have a target which is a home location, without any conditions, show this layout. That's it. So layout resolving process works by running through the list of rules on each request and just evaluates targets and conditions, and whichever first target and condition satisfy, which have a layout, that layout will be shown on the front page. You can add your own mapping. It's added at the bottom by default, so it doesn't mess up with your page. Did you want to ask something? Did you want to ask something? Oh, okay. So a target, as I said, a target is nothing more than a set of URLs. So if you have an easy content as a target, you only have one URL because the content only has, you have multiple URLs because a content has multiple locations, so of course it can have multiple URLs. When you select an easy location, you only have one URL. Easy subtree is a whole set of locations under a subtree. Easy children is only first level of a subtree. Easy semantic path info is basically the same thing as path info in Symfony. It only excludes the site access part. So you can have a request URL prefix, path info prefix, root, and root prefix. So for example, you can apply a layout on every Symfony root that begins with my app, and that's it. And then you have a set of conditions. For example, in Easy, you have a site access condition, so it will be only applied when you're in certain site access or site access group, time of the day. HTTP error code is useful for error pages. You can apply it when you have only a query parameter. Or, for example, in this case, when we have it applied on a root, we can say, okay, apply it on a root, but only if root has a parameter called param with a value called value.
So is it possible to change the operator for a parameter? Because right now it seems like you can make conditions only when some parameter exactly matches some value.
You can use, okay, so you can add more values.
No, I mean, but is it possible to create a condition when some parameter contains some value? Or is it possible to use...
Not with this built-in one, but you can create your own conditions. We will not be showing that because it's a bit complicated and we won't have time, but you can create your own conditions which do that.
And are you able to use regular expressions as the value?
A custom condition is just a PHP class that evaluates something, so you have full power to do whatever you want. It's just a matter of showing it in the interface. So you need to build a good enough interface to allow for a valid input, so to say. But these built-in conditions cannot do that. They're just a showcase of what a simple condition can do. But we have online docs which explain how to create your own targets and conditions, so you can do whatever you wish, basically.
And will be it a part of this workshop?
No, because we won't have time. I wanted to show most important things, so creating a layout, a block plugin, and something like that. But I believe if we had a workshop of 6 hours, then yes, then I will show it, but not in a time slot of 3 hours. So you can use any set of conditions. So if you have multiple targets, the important thing is that this rule matches if we match any of the targets specified in the rule. And if we have multiple conditions, all conditions must be met for the rule to apply. So once we create a rule and we attach a layout which will be shown with our rule, we can just save the changes. At this point, the layout is not currently, the rule is not currently active. First, you need to activate it. And then, of course, you need to reorder the mappings to move it way back up. So we made this a little bit convoluted in order not to mess up your site by default. So adding a new rule which potentially applies to all of the URLs can mess up your site, of course. So we went to lengths to try not to do that. So you need to activate the mapping. You need to drag and drop it by yourself to the top to actually mess up your site. So it's on you, it's not on me. So that's for specific IPs. Okay, maybe, but I would argue that it's not the job of Netgen Layouts to do that. It's the job of your security software or a firewall or. Well, you can use that. You can use that, for example, with a query parameter condition. You can say, okay, add a query parameter condition, test true, save condition, and then this layout will only show if you have a query parameter test equals true, for example. No, not in these existing ones, but again, since targets and conditions are evaluated with a request as a context, you can do whatever you wish with a request. So finally, before I go in an actual workshop, I just wanted to show in the backend, in the code, how the layout is resolved and applied to a site. So it all begins with a request to the server, of course. And then request comes to the controller. Symfony decides which controller to use. Controller is ran. Controller renders something and returns the rendered content. We don't mess with that. So that you will always have a way to do that. We will not override any of that. Where we inject our layout is when you already have a twig template rendered. So, for example, in Easy, when you render a full view of an article, instead of extending your page layout, you will need to extend a dynamic variable we called ngbm.layout template. NGBM is a shorthand for Netgen Block Manager, which is an old work-in-progress name for Netgen Layouts. We will rename these before the final release, but for now it's NGBM. So what this does, extending this special variable, this is actually a method call, so this bootstraps the layout resolving process. So if a layout is resolved, then this basically returns the name of the template of the resolved layout. And if the layout is not resolved, for example, if you have no layouts, or if no layouts match the current request, this will just return the original page layout that you have set up in your Easy application. In the case of Easy, the original page layout is taken from the configuration. What I didn't mention before, that Netgen Layouts works with any full-stack Symfony app, so it's not related closely to Easy. It doesn't have to have Easy in the background. In case of other CMSs, you need to specify your own custom page layout. Okay, so once the layout is resolved, for example, let's say that layout 4, we have 6 layouts, layout 1 to layout 4 in this default set of layouts. So when the layout 4 is resolved, this ngbm.layout template will actually be this one. And it will be shown. So what this does is this goes through every zone in the layout and just renders it with a twig tag. And then we have a second extents, which this time is ngbm page layout template. This is the original page template that you had before you even installed Netgen Layouts. So basically, Netgen Layouts template is just injected between the full view and the page layout, and that's it. So the page layout needs a little bit of adjustment for this to work. Let me find the real one. Okay, so this is it. So we just need to wrap the block content inside of block layout. So what this ensures is that if layout is not resolved, so you don't get this template, this will be rendered. And if the layout is resolved, since you have it wrapped inside of block layout, this will be rendered. And that's it. So by default, when you create a layout and apply it to a page. It replaces the entire thing that the controller rendered. But however, if you remember, you can add a full view block. You can add a full view block which will just show the result of the twig which controller rendered. So for example, this is a default layout which is applied to all of the pages when no other layout is applied. It only has header, footer, and the full view, and that's it. Finally, two things I want to show before we start coding. One is that we integrated Netgen Layouts into the Debug Toolbar, so it's developer friendly. You can see the current version of Netgen Layouts. Again, if in the development mode or not tagged mode, or you can see the current commit hash. You can see the layout which is resolved with a link to the layout, so you can edit it directly. You can see which the layout type is, which rule decided that this layout will be rendered, and which targets and conditions that rule had. And finally, you have the list of all the blocks which were rendered. When you click on the link showing the template, you will get a nice page from Symfony which shows the full path to the rendered template and the template output itself. That's part of Symfony, yes. So that works for this template too, and that's it. Which, I mean, it's part of Symfony, I think, in the twig panel. Okay, not maybe this version, but it's part of some version of Symfony. But basically, there is a Symfony way in the debug toolbar to show the template. So it's just the matter of deciding which template to open. So it only has a profile/open URL, and that's it. So this is the debug toolbar. And finally, I said that Netgen Layouts is not specific to Easy. This workshop will be held on Easy, but Layouts itself work on Cilius and Contentful. So Contentful is a REST API-based CMS. So we use its REST API to communicate with the endpoint. And Cilius is a full-stack Symfony application, so it works. So I have a Cilius site prepared. So when I go to admin, I have Netgen Layouts integrated in the admin interface. And then I can create a new layout. For example, call it layout 4. Sorry? No, only Easy, but this is open source, so you can. We have a fork of Cilius Standard Edition with Netgen Layouts integrated, so you can just go composer create project Netgen Layouts Cilius site, and then you get the whole thing by default. So once I add, for example, a couple of blocks, most recent products, I can add the. So this is the nice thing. I can add the very same blocks I have in Easy, and add this time Cilius products to them. Yeah, exactly. That's a connector. Something, yeah. So that's a connector between layouts and Cilius. Sorry? Yeah, it has two custom query types, so you can fetch content from Cilius. It's documented. It's documented. It has a defined set of steps you need to do. It's not trivial, but it can be done, of course. It has certain components that need to be wired together, but once you do that, it works. Yeah, it's a plugin. It's a plugin between Netgen Layouts and a certain CMS. Not currently. Not currently. We only have a tree and a search. The idea is to add some support for filters, but not yet. Okay. No, no. It's completely without easy. No, no, no. So what we have is something called Layouts Cilius site. This is a blueprint installation. It's a fork of Cilius Standard Edition with 15 lines of changes to allow Netgen Layouts to install. So yeah. So this is the integration. This is the clean Cilius Standard Edition. We add some Netgen Layouts bundles. We add some configuration, some variables, import routing, configure the security, and add the composer JSON. That's it. That's everything. So this is the integration into the Cilius. And the integration itself is a separate package which has all of the code needed for the integration to work. So, okay, so I created a new layout here in Cilius. I wanted to show it on the Cilius front page. So let's see how the Cilius front page is called. So it's Cilius shop homepage. Okay. So once I create a new mapping and I say, okay, link me a layout, the layout I created, attach it to a route, Cilius shop homepage, save changes, activate the mapping, and now this is it. Most recent products. That's it. Once you deactivate the mapping, you get the original page back. That's all. So, any more questions before we start coding?
What about caches? Because I'm using Varnish, so I need to ban some caches when I publish a new article. For example, I have a listing of articles. I need to clear that. And also, is it possible to render ESI?
Okay. So, a layout which is displayed on a page adds a header to a response which is called xLayout ID. We will switch later to xkey in Varnish. So it adds a header which you can use to clear the caches. You can, of course, do an event listener which, when the article is published, just clears a certain set of layouts. And that's it. ESI support, we don't touch that, at least for the full page. However, in the enterprise version of Netgen Layouts, there is, so what I failed to mention, that Layouts is open source, but there are some components which we kept closed source. So one of them is having a possibility to set a different caching policy for some blocks. So when you have a page which is cached, for example, for a day, you could set an ESI cache for a certain set of blocks, to example, for 5 minutes. So it will be rendered via the ESI request, and will have its own caching policy. And you will have an admin interface which shows all the blocks which have enabled a caching policy, where you can clear the block.
So basically, that interface in the enterprise allows you to clear either the cache for the entire layouts.
No, the free version allows you to clear the cache for the layout, but the enterprise version allows you to clear the set and clear the caches for blocks themselves. I don't have it. Maybe I do. Let me check. Maybe I do have it installed. But this is so this is an ugly site because this is my development site, so it looks kind of like this. So if I go to a layout, and edit a layout, for example, I want to set the cache on this grid layout, I have an option here called configure cache. So what I can do is say enable cache and set the TTL. So it can be 0, of course, or it can be 5 minutes. And then you get the icon here indicating that the cache is refreshed every 5 minutes. And once you publish the layout, this was the home layout, okay? So now once you publish the layout, you have this option here called clear block caches, which just lists all the blocks in that layout which have a cache enabled, or it lists the blocks which are rendered via Ajax. You can set certain blocks to be rendered via Ajax, so you can clear the caches on those blocks. So this doesn't work because I don't have varnish, but
does this mean that all these blocks are rendered via ESI
yeah.
subrenders? So
Yeah.
each and every, and not only in the enterprise versions, and not only those that are capable of being cleared by this.
Sorry,
All these small blocks.
no, they're not rendered via ESI. So
it's a normal include in those cases.
So by default, blocks are included in the full page cache. And you can't render the block with the ESI in the open source version. You can if you develop your own endpoints for that, of course. But by default, you can't render a block with the ESI caching strategy in the free version. In the enterprise version, you get this interface. So once you set a caching policy, the block will be rendered automatically with the ESI.
So there's versioning for layouts, right?
Not full versioning. We have a draft layout, we have a published layout, and we have an archived layout.
Okay.
So what you edit is a draft layout. So while editing a layout, while removing blocks, adding blocks, removing them, and so on, you can never mess up your site because the front end only shows the published version. So once you publish the layout, the old draft is discarded. The current draft becomes a published version, and the previously published version goes to an archive.
Okay.
And what enterprise version adds is a possibility to say restore archived version.
Okay.
So this is not a full versioning. We have plans to implement the full versioning, but for now, this is the only thing we have. Yeah.
And for support for translations, that would be in the template, on the template level?
Translations are also part of the enterprise version.
Okay.
So you can have an interface which says translate layout,
Okay.
and then you get an interface so in this case, dimmed blocks are the blocks which have disabled translations. You can add a new translation. And then just say, OK, this is the Croatian translation. And when you switch to the English, you get the original, of course. And once you publish, the layout which will be rendered is the one that matches the request locale, and that's it.
Thanks.
So when I'm mentioning it, so when I've shown you all the enterprise versions, the final thing I wanted to show is in the enterprise version we also have one more interface which is called change layout type. So once you create a layout in the free version, you cannot change its type anymore. In the enterprise version, you get a nice interface. So just to make it perfectly clear, translation support and changing layout type is available in the open source version on the PHP level, so in the PHP API. So you can, for example, create your own console application which translates the layouts. No problem with that. It will be rendered. So the correct layout will be rendered when rendering the layouts. You just don't get the interface. The same thing is with the change layout type. You have a PHP API that can change the layout type, but you don't get the interface. So no, the ESI blocks are specific. They don't have the implementation at all in the open source version. So what you can do here is okay. What happened? Okay. I can't remove here because this one is shared. So I can remove some zones and I can map them somewhere else. Or I can leave some zones unmapped, and that's it. And these are discarded. So once I apply, I get the new layout. I get the new version. That's it.
Should I press something? I just saw some blocks and there was some tweak content in some of the blocks. And so are you able to specify tweak code which will be rendered in the block through the interface? And if yes, then I have a question. Where is it stored? Is it in database? I mean the content of the block.
Okay. Let me go back to my page. It seems we will not have time for coding after all. Okay. So those simpler blocks have support for simple twig rendering. So let's say it like that, but I will explain it. So if you once you render a page, you have a full view template. For example, you can have a variable set which says, okay, set article name, whatever. This is a full view template. So once a layout is applied to the page that renders that full view template, you can do something like this in these simpler blocks. You can say article name. So this will basically just take the variable from the full view and display it. If it doesn't exist, it will just skip the variable name, and that's it. Once we detect that this string has these markers, we will switch it to a twig template. So we will render it as a twig template to enable this.
I'm sorry. And where is the content of the block stored? Is it in the database?
It's stored in the database.
So if somebody will get access to your database, then they will be able kind of change of twig templates.
Okay, but if someone has access to your database, you have bigger problems. So, so you can do this simple tasks, simple renderings. You can't do this, so we disabled this. That's not possible. In fact, if you write it like this, this will not be considered a twig template again. So if you have this, if you have this rendering of a variable here, and then you say, okay, if something blah, 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 then this will not be considered as a twig template at all, just as a precaution. So you just can do you just can render simple variables here, which are scalars or objects with toString method, and that's it. This is useful. This is useful for. This was useful for us when we had a set of layouts which are exactly the same, but have only a difference in a title block. So, for example, this was the case with latest products in, latest articles in topic running, latest articles in topic healthy food, latest articles in topic blah blah blah. So, to achieve that, before we had to create 3 exact the same layouts with all the same set of blocks, just to change the title. And then we did this. This is of course a purely developer thing. No normal editors will not do this because they can't do this because they will have to edit the full view to actually achieve that. But this is a thing for developers that helps cutting down on the copy pasting of layouts in certain conditions.
I'm sorry, and there's only one way to define that parameters in that weak templates, right? Or is it possible to set that parameters on the layout level using that right panel?
No, currently no. Currently no. It's only purely for rendering the variables from the full view template.
That may be a silly question, but basically just because you are a Symfony app, you are plugged everywhere where we can, and we have the collector and controller.
Actually, you can run it without any connector at all, so you can run it on a pure Symfony application.
Okay. And in extension, just as Easy Platform with or without the NG layout, and or Celus with or without a possible NG, you can also scale your app to use on a day-to-day or not at all your layouts. So you can use,
of course,
basically the routing Symfony app and just for one URLs.
Of course, if you don't want to use layouts on a certain pages, so you can have them installed, but if you don't want to use them, this is it. The layouts resolving process will not run, and you will not get any performance hit because of installed Netgen layouts but not used Netgen layouts. So this is the only thing, one line change in your full view templates, and that's it.
Okay.
So before the break, the first task I have for you is to create a custom layout. So when you go and create a new layout, you get the interface showing you all the available layouts. These come from the standard set of layouts which we have in the layouts standard composer package. And if none of these matches your requirements, you can of course create your own. So creating a custom layout is done by creating some set of configuration and 2 layout templates. One layout template is used for the front end, and the other layout template is used for the back-end application with the drag and drop interface. Sorry, it was shown. So okay. So it's ng admin UI, or you can even use the /admin, which is a standard easy administration interface, and Netgen Layouts is integrated into that too. So you can use it either with ng admin UI. This is our legacy admin interface for easy, and you can use it integrated into the standard easy platform admin UI. Yeah, it's on top. Basically, the things are the same. So what you see here are exactly the same things as you as you see here. The page itself is rendered with the controller included in Netgen Layouts. So this is not a this is just a wrapper around the Netgen Layouts interface. You can also have a standalone Netgen Layouts interface without any integration into any Netgen admin UI or easy platform UI. Okay, so to create a custom layout, as I said, we need a set of configuration and we need a set of templates. So in this project, I have prepared a bundle called Web Summer Camp bundle. So you can use it to, if you want to follow me, you can use it to write your own code. If you don't want to follow me, you can check out steps 1 through 6 to have finished code already available. So the first config we have to create is a config for a layout. I will be using YAML because it's faster. So we specify a custom layout type, and we say it is called Web Summer Camp Layout. It can have a nice name. It's not yet translatable. It will be. And it can have an icon. I can specify a full path to an icon. Okay. And the most important thing for a layout to have is a set of zones. So I need to specify that a layout has, for example, 2 zones. One which is called left with a nice name left, and one which is called right with the name right. And so this is what it takes to specify that a new layout type is available in the system. And now we need to specify which templates are used for this layout type. So the specification of the templates is done through a separate config called view and layout view. So this configuration is inspired by easy view configuration. So you can have a set of rules which will be evaluated, and then a set of matchers which will match the currently display the layout. And if a certain matcher matches and returns true, then the configured Twig template will be used as for that layout. So this is really similar to what Easy does with their content view and location view rules. So, so this is the name of the component. This is the name of the view we are configuring, and this default string here is something I call context. That's basically a context where the Twig template is displayed. So a default context is used on the front end, and in the back end we use a context called API because it's fetched over the API and rendered over the API. So you can specify with this 2 different templates with the same matching rules, one for front end and one for back end. So you have a default and API contexts, and you can say, okay, so rule 1 doesn't matter. When we match a layout type called Web Summer Camp Layout, use the template called So as you can see, this is really inspired by Easy. At NGBM is also inspired by Easy. This is similar to Easy theming engine called Easy Design. This here is really, really similar to that. So it basically takes a set of directories and goes through them, searching for a template. First directory that has the template called layout / web summer camp layout HTML twig is taken into account. And then we have a similar, probably exactly the same rule for the API, with the difference that we don't use the theming engine in the API context, so you will need to specify Netgen web summer camp, for example, /ngbm/API. Yeah, that's about it. And now we need to create the templates. We need to also add the configuration to dependency injection. So this is standard Symfony prepends stuff. Nothing to write home about. So once I create a configuration for my layout, I'll go and create the templates. So the first template that I will create will go to views folder, and then ngbm themes standard. So this @ngbm namespace resolves to a set of folders which have a structure similar to this. So this is all documented on Netgen Layouts documentation, which, by the way, I can show you. So it's .netgen.io. You have Netgen Layouts docs, and you have a cookbook with a set of articles explaining how can you create custom layouts, custom blocks, block plugins, custom targets, and custom conditions for you. So this is a page for custom conditions. It just documents everything you need to create a regex condition for root parameter or query parameter, for example. So this is all documented on the docs Netgen.io. So okay, I can create this folder, and then inside that standard folder, the standard theme is always available in Netgen Layouts. So when you use @ngbm, you don't have to have any configuration at all. You just place the templates into a standard theme design, and it will work out of the box. So now inside this template, I can create a layout folder, because now we follow this path here. And then I create the template. Come on. So if you remember the layout for HTML twig, what you have to do is extend ngbm.page_layout template. So that's what we're going to do. You have to create a twig block called layout. And then inside of that block, you can do whatever you want. You have access to a currently rendered layout with ngbm.layout. So you can, for example, do this. It will dump the entire layout object. Or you can just go ahead and render the zones. So let's just copy-paste a bit. I have no idea how to write bootstrap markup, so I need to copy-paste that. So we don't need this, for example. And then we just say, OK, render the zone left and render the zone right. And that's it. That's everything you need for the front end. And now for the back end, so we said, OK, Netgen Web Summer Camp /ngbm/API/layout. So let's do that. /API/layout. And then we create this. So in this template, you also have an access to a layout variable, with an exception that it's only a layout. I won't go into why is the difference between the front end and the back end, but it's what it is. You just have to trust me. You have access to a layout, but you will actually not use it to render the backend template, because the backend template is only a placeholder for the JavaScript application. So instead, what you will do is have a set of placeholders which will be used by the front-end application as placeholders when you drag and drop the blocks. So what you need to do is, so we said here that this is 8 and 4. Okay, that works. So we can say this. So for every zone that the layout has, you need to have div data zone with the zone identifier. And that is it. So now once we create a new layout, hopefully we will see it in the interface. This is it. So this is there. If you open the profiler, you will see that there is a request for the icon, which is missing from the file system, of course, but the request is there. So now once I create it, you get an interface with 2 zones, which you can use to add blocks. And you can publish the layout. And what we will be doing is, with layout mappings, I will create a mapping that will push it all the way up to the top, so I can render it on the front page without any other blocks. So just hello web summer camp. So I create a mapping, link it to my layout. Okay, I can add a target that says request array, and I can say /. Then activate the mapping, drag and drop it all the way to the top. And then save the order.
Seems like it would be a good idea to have some internal route, like Symfony has for route,
okay.
Like Symfony has for an errors testing, which will expect to receive layout in.
Exactly. That's the preview I was talking about, which is not yet implemented. So yeah, we should be working on that, but it's not ready yet. But it will be probably something like that, a special route which will receive a layout and the URL of the original page, and then you can show how the layout will be looking in the context of that page. We call it a layout preview module. So now, once I open my front page, I should get a hello web summer camp. So now I can go and let's close this. So now I can go and edit the layout and add some blocks. Okay, add 4 items, doesn't really matter. And render them in a 2 columns view. And I get this. So this is all it takes to create a custom layout. That's it. Any questions? Can you?
New custom layout extend some kind of base template, or is it just up to you to implement it as such? So, for example, like you have a base template where you keep your, I don't know, Google Tag Manager codes and
there is no base templates for layouts. There is for blocks. We'll come to that when we implement a custom block. But there is no base layouts for templates. Most of the cases, custom templates, custom layouts and templates for them depend on your front end. And there's really no sane way to have any kind of custom code or common code between them so they can be used on the front end. So layouts do not have a base template. Blocks do, however. Blocks do, and I will show that now next. Okay, so this process is described in the documentation. So when you go to Netgen Layouts, Cookbook, creating a custom layout type, so you will see a section with the basic configuration, which we already did. Creating a front-end template, creating a back-end template, and creating a view configuration for for rendering the block. This lists the matchers that you can use for matching the rendering of a template. So you can use the layout /type, \type, and layout \shared matcher. So, for example, if you're rendering a shared layout differently than a non-shared layout, so this is used in the administration interface because you can't actually render a shared layout on a front page. This is used in a backend interface. So this interface is rendered in the exact same way as in the front end. So the exact same rules, the exact same configuration is used with the matchers and so on to render the administration interface. So, for example, layouts and shared layouts have a certain differences in rendering. So this says references 13. This doesn't have references but mappings. So this is achieved through just by using an additional matcher to match that this layout is a shared one and then apply a different layout to that matcher. So these matchers are also documented. You can have them. You have them in the reference part of the documentation. So view, it's called a view layer, and then you have list of built-in matchers. So not all matchers are used everywhere. Layout \type and layout \shared are used to render the layout. Block \definition, block \view type are used to render the block, and so on, and so on. Hrvoje.
So on the admin view of the layout, we can add some custom message or anything that will display, right? The JavaScript app won't.
You can override the template and modify it in any way you wish, but the template itself is a bit complicated.
But no, I mean that template. Like you just need the data zones, and that is all that matters, and we can add other things to it too.
Yeah, you can add other things, but they won't really show up in the interface because the interface is tailored to only have placeholders.
Okay.
But you can, in development at least, you can, for example, dump a variable, dump a whole layout and expect it in the dumped output. But it won't make any sense because the front-end application will overwrite it anyway.
I'm just thinking about some custom message or note if you want to include it.
You can do that, but then you would need to, of course, add your own styles to style the message, which is possible through configuration. You can say you can say through configuration that some CSS is to be injected into the application interface, but you will need to do that manually, of course.
Okay.
Now, let's create a custom block. So a block is basically a single lowest unit that you will use to build your custom layouts. So once we have our custom layout, you will have, of course, add a set of blocks to that layout to actually show up on the front end. We added 2 blocks for now in our layout, but we added a set of standard and already available blocks. Now we will add a custom block. So the block I will be using will be called a tags block, which will be used to show a set of tags attached to a content in EZ. So if you've heard of a tags bundle for EZ, you will know what it does. It allows you to attach a set of tags to a content field, and we will use that tags bundle to fetch the tags and display them in a layouts block. So first, let's add a YAML file, which we'll call blocks.yaml. Let's add it to a dependency injection container. And then, yep. Yeah, there's a handle to the left once you click the reorder. So in Netgen Layouts, a custom block is called. So creating a custom block is a process of creating something called block definition. So it's called a block definition because it defines how the block behaves. So we do this by creating block definitions item in a YAML file, and then we say, okay, our block definition will be called tags, and with a nice name of content tags, for example. Every block definition needs to have at least one view type. So a view type is nothing more than a twig template that will be used to render the block definition either in the front end or in the back end. So by convention, in Netgen, when we create custom blocks, since you need to create at least one view type for that block, we call that view type with the same identifier as the block itself. So when you need to add another and another, then you need to name them differently. But for this example, since we only have one view type, we will call it just the same as the block itself. So we will say view types, we will call it tags, and it will have a nice name, which is the same as for the blocks. And of course, you can also add an icon here for the block with the path to the SVG file, which will not work, so let's skip it. It will not work because there's no file on the file system. So this is the basic configuration for the block to be registered in the system. So now the next what we need is a block definition handler. This is a class that will be used to define how the block looks and behaves. So we will create a PHP class. Let's create a folder first. Let's create a PHP class, and we will call it, for example, tags block handler. So this tags block handler needs to implement an interface, or it can extend an abstract class, which is available in Netgen Layouts, to cut down the number of boilerplate methods that you need to implement. So we can just say block definition handler. There's two of them, so one in tests and one in in the real namespace, so watch out for that. And this is it. The block now will be functional. It will not do anything, but it will be functional. So first, we'll need to implement two methods. One method is used to specify which parameters the block will have. So those are the parameters that will, let me just comment out this so it doesn't crash. So the first method specifies the block parameters that the block will have. These correspond to these parameters that will be shown here in the right-hand side. So number of columns here is a parameter for a grid block. Set background color is a parameter which comes from a block plugin, which we implemented in Netgen Media site, which applies to all of the blocks. Enable paging is a parameter which also comes from a block plugin, but only applies to a grid block, and so on and so on. CSS class and CSS ID are also a set of common parameters which come from a block plugin, which is also again applied on every block. So the point of this method is to specify which parameters will be shown in the right-hand side. So what we will do is say, okay, the method is called parameters. It receives an object called parameter builder interface, parameter builder. So there's still no return type hits in my code for in the interfaces because we just recently upgraded to PHP 7, so we didn't add the scalar type hits and return type hits to the extension points, so not to break the existing code. But once we go, I added them all in all other code, internal code, so they will be added in the final release. So, but you can just add them yourself in your implemented blocks. So this method, or rather this builder, is modeled after a Symfony form builder. So what you can do is say builder add a parameter called, let's see how we'll call it. Okay, we will call it content. And then you need to specify the class of the parameter type. So let's just find the real one. Okay. And this is it. So what this does, it adds a parameter called content, which is of type content. So maybe a better name for the class could be content parameter type. Okay, but it's content type. So it's not content type from EZ, it's a parameter type named content. Yeah, I can go with this as EZ parameter type, or just to make it clear, yeah. So this will be one parameter. So this parameter will be used to select a content from the EZ backend. So, yeah. So it uses so this parameter internally uses content browser and its Symfony form, which is implemented into content browser, to actually show up the content browser interface, allowing you to select the content. I will show it. So the second parameter we will be adding is a limit parameter, which we will use to limit the number of tags which will be displayed. That's it. So this will be an integer type, and we will say that it has some certain options. So we will say that the default value of a parameter type is going to be 3, and the minimum value of 1, and that's it. So as you see, this is really similar to Symfony form builder. The name of the form, or in this case parameter, the type of the parameter, and the options. if you look at the parameter and implement your own, you will see that it uses Symfony options resolver component to specify which parameters you can set on this integer type. So you can set the minimum and the maximum. They can be null or integer, of course, and the normalizer just sets the maximum value to the sets the, I think, the maximum value to the minimum value if the maximum is lower than minimum. So it just makes sure that the data is correct. Sorry?
I'm not sure about the line number, but there is a question sign int value. Yeah,
this.
So it means null or int?
Yeah, this is a return type for nullable int. So you can specify return types in a PHP closures, just with any PHP method. So this means that this method can either be null or can either return null or integer. That's it. And you have a same thing with the parameter, with the argument of the method. So you can say that this argument can be an integer or a null. It's the same thing as this, with the minor difference is that when you specify it like this, you don't need to specify the argument. But if you specify it like this, the argument must be specified even if it's null. Yeah. It's by default null, but you need to specify it. So this is the only thing that is needed to make it show up in the interface. It doesn't do anything. It will show up as a blank block, and it will have two parameters on the right-hand side. So let's just okay, I'm lying. We still need to register this class with the Symfony dependency injection tag. So what we're going to do is say, let's reactivate this one. And what we're going to do is say, okay, so this is Web Summer Camp block, which is called tags. Tags block handler. Block definition handler. So these are also kind of wordy and long, but these will be renamed before the final release to just say Netgen Layouts .block, and that's it. But these are remnants of the 3 years of development. So, and I think I need to add the identifier of the block, which is only tags. So now when I refresh the page, hopefully it won't crash. Okay, my block will be automatically shown up in the custom blocks group at the bottom of the sidebar. So when I add it, it will have no design. It will be blank completely. It will have a toolbar here, and this is what you asked here. That it has do blocks or layouts have a set of basic templates which are extended to have some black magic or some common functionality. This is the one. So in the backend, blocks automatically have a template which displays this toolbar, which is used to delete the block and duplicate the block. So if you don't specify a template for a block, it will automatically pick this one without any, of course, without any further functionality. So now in the right sidebar, we have our two parameters that we defined. So the one is called content and the one is called limit. To add the translations for these parameters, you just need to add resources, translations, right? Translations folder. You need to add a new catalog called ngbmn.yaml, and then just say block tags content. You can of course use xlif, but I use YAML as because it's faster. So now it's content and limit. I need to clear all of the caches because I added a new catalog. So now once I refresh, the parameters will be translated. So we have our own 2 parameters, and we have a set of parameters which come from block plugins. So when you implement a block plugin, every block plugin has to specify on which blocks it will be applied. They can either specify that they are applied on one block, or all of the blocks, or a set of blocks implementing a certain interface. So if you need block plugin on for example, your 3 custom blocks which are closely related, you just create a marker interface, implement it in your blocks, and then the block plugin will say, okay, for every block that has this marker interface, then add the parameters to them, and that's it. But these block plugins are implemented in a way that they show up in every block by default. So you asked about the content parameter and the selecting from the backend. So this is a Symfony form that is implemented into in the content browser, and it just boots up the content browser interface, which you can use to select, for example, fitness. And then you get here fitness. Then you can click again and select something else. For example, healthy eating, again with the image aliases. Or let's find some content which has actual tags. I don't think healthy eating has any tags. For example, I think this one has tags. And then we say a limit. We set the limit. It can be without any limit. It can't be 0 because we specify that the minimum value is 1. And we can say 2. Sorry?
That 0 value validated on the front end?
No, it's validated in the backend. So once I do this, this actually submits the form and returns the validated form. So it is completely validated in the backend by the parameter type. So if you open the type itself, then getValueConstraints method, there is a getValueConstraint method, then does the validation with the Symfony validator component. That's it, and it hooks into the Symfony forms to actually display the validation message. This is all done in the backend for you. When implementing a custom parameter type, you will of course need to specify the parameter type, the validation constraints, and the Symfony form that will be used to render the thing. But for the built-in types, which there are a fair amount of them, this is done by automatically. So you have a Boolean type, a choice, a date time, an email type. HTML type is used for the raw HTML output. It's not valid. It's outputted as a raw value, but it's internally cleaned up with the HTML purifier. You have an identifier type, which only allows identifiers. Integer, the link to the CMS item. This actually so this content type reuses this link type internally. You have a number type, a range, 3 to 5, for example, a text line, a text type, and URL type. So these are internal types that you can use. Easy integration has additional types. You saw the one for selecting a content. There is a type for selecting the location, type for selecting content types, type for selecting sections, object states, and so on. So there is a healthy set of parameters, and you will not need to implement your own. As an example, we shown before how to implement a custom parameter type with the implementing of Google Analytics validated input. So if you specify, for example, the range for some Google Analytics fetch or display, then you need to specify the range in Google Analytics format. 3 days ago, 5 days ago, or something like that, we actually use the custom parameter type to display and validate that with the Symfony validator component. Does that answer? Okay. So let's set the limit to 2. And now we need to implement an actual block. So what we will do now is implement a method that's called getDynamicParameters. This kind of acts as a controller for a block. So blocks are not rendered through Symfony controllers because I didn't want them to go through sub-requests for every block, because if you have 50 blocks on a page, you have 50 sub-requests. That's not really a good choice. So we just went for custom classes which kind of act as a controllers. So the method is called getDynamicParameters. It also has a void return type hint. It receives the block which is being rendered, and it receives an object called dynamicParameters, which implements array access, which you can use to inject custom parameters in a block. That custom parameters then can be accessed through the block template and rendered, and that's it. You can do whatever processing you want here. For example, in a markdown block, this is the place where the markdown is actually transformed into an HTML before shoving it back to the block to be rendered. So this is actually a heart of a block, so to say. So what we're going to do is we're going to inject the easy content service. Content service, the interface, where is it? Nope. Okay, let's just change it to the interface. And what we will do here is we will ask the block if the content parameter is empty, if it has a value. So we'll say that if block get parameter, which is called content, is empty, just return. We will not do anything with it. So, but if it's not empty, we will try to load the content. Load content with the value which is coming from the parameter. So the value of this parameter is just the content ID.
That parameter the content, but not content ID.
You can do that. This one doesn't, because we didn't want to load the content eagerly. But you can load it only if you need it. So you can, of course, create custom parameter types which load the PHP model or a value object or whatever you need from the from the data that's actually stored in the database. So, for example, the date-time type does that. So in the database, it's stored as a JSON encoded array with two values, a date time and a time zone. So once you load the parameter from the database, it automatically converts it to the datetime object, datetime immutable object, I think. So you can do that, of course. It's done in the parameter type. It has methods which do that. One method when converting from the persistence value, which is an ID or an array, to a domain model, and vice versa. But by default, these parameters don't do that. So you need to load the content by yourself. And then we can say, for example, catch not found exception from easy or unauthorized exception from easy. And then we can just return if we can't load the content. And then, so what I will do is, so now the content is loaded. I will say params content equals content. So I create a dynamic parameter called content, which actually holds the content object. And if my content has a field called tags, for example, so if content fields tags, if it's not set, I will return. Otherwise, I will add another dynamic parameter which will load all the tags from the content, from the field. So content get field tags value, and in the tags bundle, the value of the easy tags field has a property called tags, which is a list of all the tags in the content. So I can just use array slice to limit, and I will use the limit from the block. So block get parameter limit get value. That's it. So this is kind of a backend for our block. And then of course I need to add an argument. Service dot content. Here it is. So now when I refresh, this twig block will have access to those two dynamic variables. It will not again show up because there's no twig template. Okay, so now we need to add twig templates. Twig, yep.
Instead of selecting content manually, is it possible to have the current object we are surfing on?
Sorry?
You selected manually an object for the content value. Is it possible instead of having the current object we are on?
Yes, it is possible. Yeah, but you need to handle that, of course. If the object is not displayed in the front end, then it will not be available in the current request. I could have just taken the object from the current request. So if I injected a request tag, so I could maybe just do this instead. So whatever. So request stack, get current request, attributes. In Easy 6 or in Easy 7, there is a view attribute, which has something called content view in Easy, which has two methods, get content, get location, which correspond to the current location which is displayed and current content which is displayed. If the Easy is not displaying a content bar, for example, a content search page or an error page, then this view variable will not exist. So you can just take the content from there and that's it. So now we need to specify the block templates. First, we will specify the block template for the backend. So again, we have a view. And then instead of layout view, we now have a block view. And then since this is the template for the backend, we will use the API view context, then the block name and match. And after match, we have template. So we will say to use the template called Netgen Web Summer Camp. NGBM API block tags. If this is a block which has a definition called tags. That's it. So now once we reload, the page will crash because the template does not exist. And you get a nice error output with error details. So now once we create a template, we now created an empty template for the block, and now it will be rendered. So now instead of the basic and default toolbar with the options, we now get a template with nothing in it. But to get the toolbar back, we need to extend the base block template, and we do that with this extends at Netgen block manager. So to get the toolbar back, we need to extend this base block template. It does nothing fancy. It only renders the toolbar. And then to actually display the content we want to display, we need to have a twig block named content, which is, of course, defined here in the base template. And we override it in our twig template. And now we have our content with the toolbar. So now in this template, you have access to the block object. So you can do dump block and have access to the entire block. You can print the parameters. Or limit, for example. And if you do that, you will get a parameter object which has the name of the object, the parameter definition, which is an internal implementation detail. We have a value of that parameter and if it's empty or not. Or you can have access to the dynamic parameters which we injected into the block. So now the dynamic parameter name content will be an actual easy content. It has fields, it has version info. That's it. So this is easy content. So what we can do now is we can say if, for example, let me check out how I implemented the template. So, for example, we can say something like this: set content is block dynamic parameter content. If content is not empty, no content. So now once we clear, okay, we can't actually clear the content, but we can add a new block. So once we add a new block without the content, it will say no content because we didn't select it yet. So now when we select the content, it will not display anything because the if is empty, but you get the idea. So now what we can do is say, for example, for tag in block dynamic parameters tags, and for we can print the tag keyword. And we can use else to say no tags. Sorry? Oh, and for. Yeah, thank you. So now when we refresh, oh, there's an error. Dynamic parameters. Oh, it's dynamic parameter. It should be fine now. Yep. So there it is. So when I switch the limit to 1, I will get only 1. When I switch limit to no limit, I will get 4. When I switch limit to 6, I will again get 4. And that's it. So for the front end, we will do the same thing. So for the front end again, we create the template in the theme, in the standard theme. Okay, not the folder. We need to specify the rule to apply the template on the front page, so we use the default context. So we say for the tags block, use the template called @ngbm/block/tags.html.twig. When the block is named tags.
Why this is called tags in this case? Does it match exactly to the one that you define in the services block for the?
You mean this one?
No,
or
not that one. That's
the one. Yeah, it matches the identifier we defined in the configuration here.
Yeah, because in this file we have tags like 8 times, and they all mean completely different things. So now, for example, the one default tags is the actual name, like it's just your choice, like it's just something.
So these two.
That one's a name. So.
These two are just because YAML requires that you have an identifier. But I like to keep it the same as a block. So when you need.
And the next one, the block definition then corresponds to the one that you defined in the services YAML.
Here and in the services. Yep, here.
That's why. So those need to match.
Yeah. So this one needs to match. This one needs to match, and this one needs to match.
Great.
Yeah. So these are the just here because YAML requires a placeholder. You can say rule 1. Rule 1. We actually did it in in the layouts, if you remember. When we specify the layout, we set rule 1, so it doesn't really matter. But I like to keep it identical to the block that we are applying the configuration to, because it's easier to scan through rules and find the ones that you need.
Yeah, just now it's a little bit confusing because of all the same.
Yeah, but it's the same as it works in easy content view and location view rules. You can't do anything about it in YAML, unfortunately. That's why some people don't like YAML. So, okay. So in order not to rewrite the entire template, we will just copy paste this one, the content. So the reason why I'm doing this is to show you that the code that you implement in the backend can work in the front end. So if you have some code in Twig templates that's exactly the same for front end and back end, you can just create a macro out of it and then call it in the front end template or in the back end template. So it's basically the same. Both of those templates have access to the block as a PHP object, and you can do what you like with that. The only difference is that this front end template, instead of extending Netgen Block Manager /API, Twig template needs to extend at ngbm/block. That's the only difference, because extending this template provides a way for rendering these CSS classes and these CSS IDs that you specify here in the right-hand side. You don't have to, of course, but you will not get anything out of these fields then. As a difference from the backend template, we can, for example, render the link to the tag. And we can say path tag.
Would there be a way to help prevent the double Twig definitions, maybe with a fallback or something, or would we have to implement this logic?
I'm not sure I understand.
So basically in the API Twig and the theme Twig,
okay,
the basic difference is the extends. So would there be a pattern or a mechanism to help prevent the double definitions?
Well, as I said, if you have code that is used in the backend template and in the frontend template, you can create a Twig macro and then reuse it. So that's the approved way of creating reusable code in Twig. You don't have, or just include a template. Yeah, exactly. So we intentionally didn't want to create an API for Twig templates, because it would limit what you can do then, most probably. You're Symfony developers, you're used to using Twig, you're used to including Twig templates, creating macros, so we just said, okay, you do that, that's the best you can do anyway, so why not honor that? So we didn't want to touch it. It's purely on you to prevent duplication of the code in the backend and in the front end. So now we can render this block on the front end, and when we do, sorry?
You finished the front end template.
Yeah, I did. So I made two differences. I said that this block, this Twig template extends this one, this block HTML Twig instead of this one, and as a differentiating thing, I added a path to the tag. So that's it. So it doesn't show up on the front end yet because the layout is not published. We just added the block, we didn't publish the layout. So now, when I do this, here it is. It can be seen. It can be seen on the screen, but this is actually the link to the tag.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Okay.
So, what happens if we now, in the services YAML file, we will disable our custom block type we created?
Let's see.
Will it break the layouts?
If you disable it in the block definition,
that should be fine. But if we disable the service,
in the development mode, you will get the crash. In the production mode, you should not get the crash. At least I hope so. I did work on that, but I'm not sure. I think it's not finished yet. The loading and displaying of the undefined blocks. Okay, let's see what happens if you remove the service. So basically, this is how you disable the service. Then again, you will get a crash. But
sorry, I cannot see. Is it front end or?
Sorry?
Is the URL to admin interface or is it?
This is the admin interface.
I just cannot see. Sorry.
So let's see what happens on the front end. Yeah. But maybe if we switch it to the production mode. How can we switch to the production mode? This is the yeah. Yeah, yeah, okay, let's do that. Yeah, I know. Okay, so let's try with this first. Yeah. Okay, so it's not finished yet.
And on the front end, it will be the same, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
But in some cases, you may disable the bundle, and that bundle may have some block type as was
Okay.
Be very careful when you are disabling blocks. Otherwise, it's like we use this data types in established layouts.
Yes, of course. But why would you disable a bundle which has a block type defined in it?
There might be different use cases, you know. Sometimes it's probably not, it's very rare, but...
Okay, maybe. Maybe, but I'm not even sure how would I tackle this, because this error happens in Symfony config, then semantic configuration. So it breaks when you try to compile the container. Maybe we can work towards that. Yeah, that shouldn't matter. So okay, I'll try to work on that. So, okay, let's go back to the dev mode. Okay, so we're back in the dev mode. So with this we implemented a custom block, and now we have a half an hour left for the workshop. So in this half an hour, I'll try to do one more exercise, and this is to implement a custom query. So that's the one you use when you select a grid block. And then you say, okay, I don't want a manual collection. I want a dynamic collection, sorry. And then you select which kind of query you would like to use to fetch the data from the backend. So let's do that. So as a difference from layouts and blocks, queries don't have their own template. So naturally, you only need configuration and the PHP class, similar to block configuration and similar to block PHP class. So let's create a new file called query, and we say, okay, query types. And this is it. So this enables the query in the system. Let's add it to the dependency injection. After this, we need to create a query handler class. So it will be for the most part it will be pretty similar to creating a block class. So we can do, for example, queries. Summer camp query. And we need to implement the query type handler interface. So Netgen Layouts queries are pretty much similar to easy queries. They have basically the same features. So you specify parameters for a query and then implement the execution of the query. We didn't want to use, of course, the easy queries by default because we wanted the queries to work on all CMSs. So if you implement it on Cilius, if you implement it on Easy, you will always implement it the same way. So this time there is no abstract class because in this case it doesn't make sense. Because you need to implement all methods anyway. So there is no need for abstract class which has 4 methods empty. Let's add some type hints. So let's first explain what a contextual query is. Contextual query is a query that depends on the currently displayed page. So for example, you can have a query that says, okay, fetch me 5 latest articles from the currently displayed category. And this is how you specify that this query is using that kind of fetch or not. So you either return true or either you return false. Or you can, since you have access to the query itself from the Netgen layouts, you can expect the parameters of a query and say, okay, if I select this parameter in the interface, then the query is contextual, otherwise it's not. How does this look in the interface? I can show you with an existing query. Let's again disable this so it doesn't crash. So what you can do with this, I disabled it, right? Oh, okay. Okay. I edited the wrong file. So in a content search query, or easy platform query, whatever you want to call it, there is an option here that says use current location as parent. So when you select this, it takes the currently displayed location and uses it as a parent to fetch the content from. So, or you can select the parent location by yourself. If you click this, then you get a change in output. What this does, it hides the selection, manual selection of the parent, and it uses by default 12 numbers, but 12 items, but in the front end it will use how many items are available. So in the interface with this, we indicate that normally when you run this query, when you run this block on the front end, you will get the 4 manual items and 8 or more items that are coming based on the currently displayed content. That's why we can't display it here, because we don't know the currently displayed content. So the content search handler actually uses that boolean to switch the isContextual flag on and off. So it does this. If use current location is selected and is true, then this is a contextual query, otherwise it's not. And that's it. So this is a so that's the meaning of a contextual query. Okay, but we won't bother with that. So we'll just say that our query is non-contextual. And again, we have a build parameters method. This time, so this build parameters method is exactly the same as the build parameters from the block. So this time, we will add a parameter which is called search text, and it will be a text line type, and that's it. So now we have 2 methods to implement. One that gets the values from the query and one that gets the count from the query. So in these methods here we can use the search service from Easy. Or we can use the find service from Easy Platform Site API, whatever you wish. Search service. Okay, let's switch to interface again. And now we can do the query. So in this class, in case of Easy, we have naming collision because Easy has its own query, Netgen Layouts has its own query. So to differentiate that, we will call Easy query like this. Location query. We will say limit 0 because we only want the count and not actual results. So we achieve that with the limit 0. And then we say query new full text, is it?
Yeah.
Full text. Netgen Layouts query get parameter search text value. And then we say this search service find locations Easy query. We get the search result back. And then we just return search result total hits, total count. We can have an additional check to say if query get parameter search text is empty, then we simply return 0. Because we have to do this because I think the Easy search crashes if you transfer an empty search text to a full text criterion. Is that right, Peter?
It was the case at some point.
Yeah, okay. But so with this, you just make sure that you don't transfer the empty text. Of course, you need to trim it before, but we're not going to do that here. And this getValues method, you are expected to return, in Easy case, Easy locations or Easy content info objects. In integration with Cilius, you are expected to return Cilius products. So you return the domain object of the integration CMS. So you do not return some custom Netgen Layouts objects from these methods. You return the domain objects from the integration CMS. So in Easy case, you can return locations. So we can repeat the most of this query. But now if it's empty, we can return an empty array. The type hint is terrible because Netgen Layout supports that you return an iterator, generator, an array, whatever you wish. It doesn't care because it only iterates through the data. So an iterator or a generator or an array are both perfectly fine. So that's why I use the iterable return type hint to signal that you can use anything that is actually iterable. So array is an iterable, so that this will work. So now we don't need the limit 0, but we have a limit provided. But since the Netgen Layouts provides a way to say, okay, I want an unlimited amount of content with the null value, I don't think Easy likes that, so we will just say 24, whatever. And Easy query offset is offset. And then search hits, but we don't return a search hit object because in these search hits there the content the objects within are search hit instances, so we need to extract and convert to locations. So we do that with a simple array map. And then we specify that the closure returns an easy location. And then we just return search hits. Oh, probably the wrong search hit type hint. Yeah. Just a second. So now there it is. So that's it. Yeah?
I'm sorry, and why this function or method returns the easy location? I would expect that it will return some value object which doesn't depends on the CMS.
Because that's the job of the integration plugin itself. So when the plugin detects that it gets the location, then the internal plugin mechanism, the connector mechanism, converts it to the block item which is used to render in the block. So this way you would need to do it all the time in all the queries you implement.
Okay.
Return the block item object instead of location object. Why do that? Because if you can return the location directly, and Netgen Layouts, or rather the connector, can do the job for you.
Okay, but if, for example, we will implement data connector, or how they are called, for some new CMS,
okay,
should we change that plugin which converts location?
Yeah, that's one of the integration points. Yeah, so to actually create a connector with a new CMS, for example, Sulu CMS, which is a full stack app which has its own domain model, then yes, you will need to implement classes, interfaces that actually convert the Sulu domain objects to the Netgen Layouts.
And you'll need to do that outside of this service.
Yes, exactly. So the Netgen Layouts automatically detects based on the domain model which converters to use to convert the domain model to the block items.
I see.
Is that something you're?
I would prefer, because it seems like when you are trying to add some new integration, then you need to implement that new integration, and then you need to modify some common code, which is like this plugin which converts locations to the.
Yeah, but you will need to do that anyway. You will need to implement it anyway to actually display anything in the block.
But if there would be a method which returns standardized values for a data or for a content, then
okay,
you would need to do that in this service, and you don't need to change any common.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
So if that function would return values in some standardized way, then you wouldn't need to modify some common source code when you are trying to implement a new data connector.
Okay, it could be done that way, but this is the way I decided to do it, because these query objects, these query handler classes, are more related to the backend themselves than to the Netgen Layouts. So it seemed to me that the natural way to do that is to actually work with the domain model of the CMS which is integrated, than to mess with the internal Netgen Layouts mechanisms. That was my reasoning. So that's why it's done this way. And I doubt that this will change, but just makes more sense to me this way. Because once, so this is a query for easy platform. You can't do this with Cilius. If you want to fetch Cilius products, you will use a query for Cilius, and then it's perfectly natural for me to work with Cilius products in that query than to create some generic STD class object which you will return in place of the Cilius product when you can return the Cilius product itself because it's already available there.
But on the other side, this function returns data for a Netgen layout, which shouldn't be dependent on CMS, right?
Well, Netgen layouts can be used without any CMS,
So that's the point of returning values in some Netgen standardized ways in these functions.
Sorry?
If I'm understanding you correctly, you would want to, for example, abstract the Cilius product and the easy content into one format that you would use then.
Yeah, let's say Netgen content.
Yeah.
A use case I'm thinking of is if you wanted to query an external source, like the latest Facebook post from a page.
Okay.
Is there a way to do that with this kind of?
Well, that's not a use case for a query. That's a use case for a custom block.
Okay.
So querying a custom latest post from a Facebook page is a use case for a block because queries should be used for fetching the CMS data, not the various REST APIs or I don't know what. It's just a use case for fetching the CMS data. So in that regard, you do not need, at least in my experience, you do not need something that wraps either Cilius or Easy Platform or.
Yeah, because it is not the idea to abstract this.
Exactly.
The idea is to use different sources.
Exactly.
Exactly. I guess it makes more sense because if you look at it, the query is just for Easy Publish. I'm pretty sure the query for Cilius is something else, and then you have an abstract version in the middle. You should write one down, one plugin, one converter down to the database for storage, and one on the top. Then it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, that was my reasoning. But okay, I recognize that you may have different use cases, so maybe this is not the tool for you, of course. I mean, the query part. I'm going to try and be quick to finish this, to at least show that it's, see that it shows up in the interface. So once we created the query class, where is it? Okay, so here it is. We also need to create Symfony service for it and tag it. So we could say websummercamp.query.search class summercamp query arguments. Now we have search service as a dependency. Service.search. And we have a tag with the name, query type, and type, it was called WSC query. And this should be enough for it to be displayed in the interface. So there it is. So if we select it, we get the input for search text. And again, we can create a translation just by putting this string into the translations catalog. And we can say, for example, running. And get the content which is related to running. And we can say a limit of 10. And that's it. So this is all I have for you. I wish we could have done this for another 3 hours because I could have shown you the more steps I prepared, but what can you do? Thank you. Any questions yet?
So everything is on like in the Git repo as tags, or?
Okay, so everything is on GitHub. So it's on my profile. Web Summer Camp repo. So repositories, Web Summer Camp 2018. And everything is in branches. You have, so step 1 was the custom layout, step 2 was the custom block, and step 3 was the custom query. Yeah.
Just a question more on the business side of your Netgen layout.
Okay.
Do you plan or already working just like Easy platform and studio version? As I said, the business part is a complete other burden, or is it just a new stack you had, basically? Not trying to find or seek or steal, but just what's the logic to... I understand that you have to earn the research you made for this project, but just as you were talking about the release, do you still intend to employ the Easy Systems way as a support, dedicated resources, etc.? Or is it just maybe a commercial thing to really have a product for community and backport some capabilities based on a complete other bundle?
Well, there'll definitely be community support, so just like with Easy, but I can't tell you the details because there are no details yet. So we didn't have time to prepare the actual strategy yet because we just open sourced. Yeah. So we open sourced this like 10 days ago before the conference. So we didn't have enough time to go through the actual process of defining what will go into the enterprise version, what will go into the open source version, what will the support model be. So you should talk probably to Ivo and Vjeran and Igor to talk about that. Okay.
Anyone else?
The admin UI of Easy would be good enough, or do you just keep supporting it too?
What do you mean?
Using Netgen layouts in admin UI of Easy.
Okay, so my point from the start was that everything you get in the admin interface of Netgen layouts, you will get in any of the integrations. Because the integration in the admin UI is just a wrapper around the admin interface of Netgen layouts. So whatever works in the admin interface of Netgen layouts will work in the Easy platform integration. And the Easy platform integration, together with the integration into admin UI, is open sourced. So there's no reason why you shouldn't use it.
And you keep
yeah, it will be kept supported. What we don't support is the old Easy platform UI, the one from the 1.x.
The Easy
UI
itself also doesn't support.
Yeah,
it,
so we actually did have an integration into that because some of our customers required it, but we didn't want to open source it. It was bad. It was bad.
Just now that you're taking, I basically use your tags bundle every day. And
sorry, I can't really understand you.
I'm using the tags bundle and use from testing the layout bundle. And my main issue was to understand how you manage to, on one project, switch to the admin UI and or the 2.0 integrations.
Well, we can discuss the details later for that. The mechanism is the same. So the same mechanism I used in the text bundle to integrate into various admin interfaces I use here. So we can meet up after lunch and I can show you. Okay. Oh yeah, of course. Okay, thank you.